It's been years since I started working as a hearse driver. My job's simple. I transport the dead, either to their families or to the funeral home. When I was younger and just starting out, I used to get caught up in the details like the name of the deceased, how they died, what kind of life they lived. But over time, that curiosity faded. Now it's just a job. I focus on the road, not the body in the back. Most of the time, I don't even know the name of the person I'm transporting. Usually there are two of us on these trips, me and my assistant. But on this particular night, things didn't go as planned. My assistant called in sick at the last minute, said he was running a fever. I thought about backing out, but my boss sweetened the deal, offering me extra money to handle it solo. It was late, almost midnight, but I figured, why not? A job's a job, right? So, I agreed. I loaded the body into the hearse and started the drive. It was just another night on the road, or so I thought. Looking back now, I realize I should have listened to that little voice in the back of my head telling me something felt off. But at the time, I just shrugged it off and got to work. The roads were dark and empty, just the way they usually are at that time of night. No streetlights, no cars passing by, just the hum of the engine and the faint sound of gravel under the tires. I'd been driving for maybe 15 minutes when I saw him. A lone figure standing by the side of the road, hand outstretched, thumb up. A hitchhiker. Now, I don't normally stop for anyone, especially when I'm on a job like this. But something about him made me slow down. He looked young, maybe in his mid-20s, dressed neat, like he'd just come from somewhere important. I rolled down the window a bit and told him straight up, "This is a hearse, and there's a dead body in the back. Are you sure you want to get in?" He hesitated for a second, looking past me at the vehicle, but then he nodded. "Yeah," he said, a little unsure. "It's late, and I don't think there's going to be another car anytime soon." I could tell he wasn't thrilled about it, but he climbed in anyway, settling into the passenger seat. He introduced himself as Harry. Once we got going, we started talking. Polite stuff at first, where he was coming from, what he did for work. Turns out he was well educated, had a good job. The kind of guy who seems to have his life together, you know. I don't meet people like that often in this line of work. Most of my passengers aren't exactly in the mood to chat, if you catch my drift. I asked where he was heading, and he said, "Home." He told me it was pretty close to where I was dropping off the body. Seemed like a lucky coincidence. He had this calm, polite way of talking that made the drive feel less lonely. For a while, I almost forgot there was a corpse in the back. But then he asked me about the body. Not in a weird way, just casual curiosity. "Do you know anything about the person?" he said. "No," I admitted. "I don't really ask those kinds of questions anymore. I just get the job done." He nodded, but his expression shifted, like something about that answer bothered him. "Some people don't deserve what happens to them," he said quietly, staring out the window. "Dying so young, it's not fair." There was this weight in his voice, like he knew something I didn't. I thought maybe he'd lost someone close to him recently, and that's why he looked so sad. I didn't press him on it though. It didn't feel right. For the next stretch of road, we just drove in silence. The silence stretched out for a while, just the hum of the engine and the occasional bump in the road. I could feel the weight of the night settling in a stillness that made every sound seem louder. Out of nowhere, Harry broke the silence. "I think you're going the wrong way," he said, his voice calm but firm. I frowned, glancing at him. "Wrong way. I've done this route plenty of times. Pretty sure I'm on track." He shook his head slightly. "No, you missed a turn back there. You're heading off course." I didn't want to argue, but something about his tone made me second-guess myself. So I slowed down and looked around for someone who could confirm. Luckily, there was a building up ahead with a small security booth out front. A guard was standing there, half asleep but still on duty. I pulled over and rolled down the window. "Hey there," I called out, trying to keep my voice light. "Am I heading the right way to Willow Lane? Got a delivery to make." The guard blinked at me, then glanced at the hearse. His expression shifted from sleepy to something off, like he wasn't sure if he was seeing what he thought he was seeing. "Willow Lane," he repeated, his voice a little shaky. "You're off track. You need to turn back and take the second left." "Appreciate it," I said, turning to the young man with a grin. "Guess you were right, son. Thanks for the heads up." When I looked back at the guard to thank him, I froze. His face had changed, confusion and unease written all over it. His eyes fixed on me. "Everything all right?" I asked, feeling a little unsettled myself now. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the car like he was trying to piece something together. Then, almost mechanically, he nodded. "Yeah, just take that left." I nodded back, though his reaction left me feeling uneasy. As I pulled away, I glanced at Harry. He didn't seem bothered at all, just staring out the window like nothing happened. The road felt heavier after that, the silence less peaceful and more off. I tried shaking it off, telling myself the guard was just tired or confused. But deep down, something didn't feel right. The drive after that strange encounter with the guard felt longer than it should have. Harry stayed quiet, and I didn't try to make conversation either. Something about the whole night felt off, but I figured I'd just focus on getting the job done and heading home. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he broke the silence. "This is close enough," he said, pointing to the side of the road near a cluster of trees. "Thank you for the ride." I slowed down and pulled over, glancing at him. "Are you sure about this? Doesn't seem like there's much out here." He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, this is home. Thanks again." I watched as he stepped out, gave me a small wave, and walked off into the dark. He didn't turn back, just disappeared into the shadows like he belonged there. It was strange, but I told myself he probably lived nearby and knew the area well. Still, the image of him vanishing into the night stuck with me as I drove the last stretch to my destination. When I arrived, the family of the deceased was waiting outside, their faces heavy with grief. I parked the hearse and got out, offering a polite nod. "Sorry for your loss," I said out of habit, even though I barely thought about the words anymore. They nodded, and we went about the somber process of transferring the coffin. The family insisted on seeing the body one last time before the arrangements were finalized. It wasn't unusual, so I stayed to help them. When they opened the coffin, my blood ran cold. There, lying perfectly still, was the young man I'd just driven with. Same face, same neatly combed hair, same clothes, everything. My legs went weak and my mouth went dry. I stared, trying to make sense of it, but there was no denying it. It was him. One of the family members let out a sob, snapping me back to reality. I stumbled back, barely keeping myself together. My mind raced. Was it a trick? Was it a dream? Or something else? Then it hit me. The way the security guard had looked at me. The odd silence from the young man, the way he'd vanished into the night. It all made sense now, though I wished it didn't. I'd been talking to a ghost. I'd driven a ghost. I didn't say a word to the family, just did my job as best as I could and got out of there as soon as possible. But that face, it's burned into my memory. Even now, after all these years, I can't forget it. That night changed the way I see things. It's a reminder that sometimes the dead aren't as far away as we'd like to think,